one. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Gin and Tantra, Spirituality with a Twist. You have Daniel driving the ship tonight, co-piloted by our friend of the show and now contributor, Rory Hiltbrand. Rory, thank you for coming on. Rory, do you have your doctorate or are you
Yeah,
Dr. Rory? Yeah, so
yeah,
Dr. Rory. That's right. Yes,
Dr.
yes.
Rory.
Rory, I think when did I meet you? Over a little over a year ago, and you were on at some point last year, maybe middle beginning of last year, which the episode had a really good, good I guess feedback we could say, and so I was like, in this new venture that we're doing here, you were the first person. I was like, oh, Rory's got to be a regular on here, so here you are. Thanks for rocking, man.
Thanks, man. Love to be here. Love just chopping it up. Love your
Yeah.
vibe. And this was the first podcast I did, so I had a lot of fun too, and happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, yeah. So let's get into it. We have kind of like a multiple threads that are happening here, right? So Eric and I are working on this like Karma Mudra, Kama Sutra, tantric flow that we're weaving together that has been started last year and is probably going to go for quite some time. And I'm going to mention it every time. So if everybody's tired of hearing about it, then just sign up and I'll stop talking about it. But we have our retreat coming up in the beginning of March, which is a Buddhist tantric, Vajrayana meditation retreat, much of which is based on a lot of the principles that we've been talking about throughout our podcast recently and probably for the next few months. So we have that as one layer. And then the other layer is with our other now regular guests, which you being one of, will kind of be our, sort of one-off conversations, our, contemporary podcast style things where we, discuss things that are, fresh and new and on our minds and hearts, So that's where today will be. And so I had this idea earlier, because I still work in the medicine space and I know you have a relationship with all, not all the things, but, many of the things. And so in that way, I wanted to talk about medicines like plant medicines in general or a healing space. Let's make it a little bit more inclusive, right? And what does it look like, or what is the term holding space? I've seen some like funny videos or people kind of like they make invisible boxes and they're like, I'm gonna hold this space for you, and there's just like
Mhm.
squeezing nothing, because it is kind of a new age term. What would you agree?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is, and I think a lot of like that, a lot of new age terms get a bad rap just with all that they're associated with. But
Yes.
like all cliches, there's some real power behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have this one of my teachers who's been on here before, Mary Kay. She went to the University of Chicago, as did Eric. And she said that they always like to begin a conversation if they're going to be around a particular topic to give a definition of said topic in order to have a point to talk around. So this penetrated my simple little monkey brain, and now I just repeat it ad nauseum. So I don't know that there is necessarily. I'm not going to use the Google definition of holding space. I'm going to give what I believe it to be. Then I'd like for you to give what you believe it to be, and then we could let the audience decide who's more right. We'll put up a poll at the end of the episode. So maybe I will do a poll and we'll see how that turns out. But for me, holding space is, I could say, for the person who is, it's a relationship. It's a discussion of a relationship, and that it's one person who is providing the space, who is creating the container, if we can use this term, for those who are in the container to allow themselves to become vulnerable. Let's make it very broad in this case, right? And the term holding space is kind of creating this, I don't want to use the term because it's a bit dated right now, but like a safe space. And that doesn't mean safe space like everybody has to watch what they say or anything else, but this is kind of a sacred space for expression where things will not be judged. Things won't be used against you. This is a place for not only catharsis, but alchemy as well. And in it, everything that transpires in here, it transpires with the intention of healing or transforming, right? And so to me, that would be what I would consider holding space for somebody. It's a non-judgmental, compassionate container of expression.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we can do a poll now because I would probably agree with you. So,
Okay, all right.
but Yeah, just to expand on it, I think
Mm,
it's it's definitely non-judgment and it's a relationship in that it's a you're in a field of energy
mm,
and it's making yourself open to what is,
hmm.
obviously in a non-judgmental way without trying to necessarily change it, but allowing for the opportunity for the person to make a change if they so choose, which can only happen once that space of acceptance and surrender is really that's where the change can occur.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, it is a field of energy for sure. And it has, but
Yeah.
it has a potential to do many things. And so on a, there's multiple layers to this, right? So we can do one, a friend layer, right? Which people do all the time, or a family layer. You talk to your wife or you talk to your friends, or you talk to me, and you're an attentive listener.
Mhm.
That's holding space for someone to communicate, even if it's just daily things. And then if it's deeper, it's their whatever their current financial difficulties or digestive troubles.
Mhm. Yeah.
um but then I think the areas that I wanted to go to a little bit more specifically are that of like because you and I both practice, we're both practicing acupuncturists, herbalists, right? um in terms of like patience. How do you, like, and it's a general, a genuine question, like, how do you approach this aspect of your practice? Because what I remember from school is that, like, when we are doing our intake on people,
Mhm.
we have questions that we ask. They're algorithmic, just like any other system of intake would be. So you ask some questions, you get some answers, and you ask more questions based on those answers. That's kind
Mhm.
of how that is. And then we compare, and then we not compare it, but combine it with active listening,
Mhm.
to hear the story behind the person, to get the healing narrative.
Mhm.
And that's kind of it. They don't really they don't really talk about much else. And so, when now that you've been in practice, how long have you been in practice for now?
Just I mean, if you, I graduated in 2020.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But you were seeing patients in school, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So 6 years, 7 years, 6, 7 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you or how do you approach this aspect of your practice of listening and working with people?
I think that's something that you experience pretty early on is something that's very real, is you get someone that comes in and what they may be facing in life is like really uncomfortable, you
Mm,
know, and you feel that in yourself and you can really feel that in your body. And so I noticed there's like an impulse to kind of like shy away from certain things and not touch,
mm,
certain charged areas or to kind of, like there's a internal posture or like an energetic posture, like some type of muscle that's internally developed in feeling certain uncomforts and still standing tall and
mm,
staying open too and allowing and embracing too and not judging. And I feel like you have to kind of fight that impulse to shy away from the
mm,
discomfort.
mm-hmm,
And so that's really like the allowing space. And there's so much in that, just in being able to be open to someone and to not shy away from, because when you allow it within yourself, you're allowing the other person to go
mm,
there too.
mm,
And to really, feel safe in exploring this territory that because I feel like, as human beings, a lot of the times we're almost like ostriches or something where we have like our our heads in the sand and our
Okay.
whole bodies like exposed to the environment. And so we have all
Yeah.
these things going on. And so I feel like, early on in treatment, I realized, well, like whatever it is that comes through the door, like it's happening. Someone may have a very traumatic childhood. There's all types of traumatic experiences that people go through. And so, can you face that and join them? I'm thought as soon as you brought this up, I thought of and you talked about judgment. I thought about this quote from Carl Jung where he talked about, if you want to heal a patient, I'm going to do a really poor job paraphrasing this, or even accompany them a step along the way, you can't judge them,
Mm.
and so yeah, I feel like that's a great this is a great topic, and I feel like it doesn't get touched on enough, and really just how important that is, the courage to move into discomfort.
Mm.
And yeah.
So I think there's something that you had mentioned about like feeling it in yourself to allow the other person to, bring it forth or experiencing it. And the thing that came to my mind is the term empty vessel.
Mhm.
So in and I believe that there's a couple ways of doing I believe there's a couple ways of doing this, right? One way is for the practitioner to kind of be a little bit removed from it, right? And they create this, I'm going to call it space, but we'll say opportunity, right? And that opportunity could be in their room, or if you're hanging out with your friend, you could be in some, wherever. But it's the energetic field in and around both people that are there.
Mhm.
And I think for me, I feel like I was taught, I don't know from whom or when, but to be as close to the outside of that field as possible. Okay. And but what's interesting about what you're saying is that like, no, you're in it with the person. And in order for this circuit to be completed, right? And that meaning you have a positive and a negative, not for our audience who's listening, not like positive and negative, good and bad. I mean,
Mhm.
electrically speaking, right? Electromagnetism. That
Mhm.
you have to have both ends of the circuit in order for the electricity to flow. And
Mhm.
so, in what you're saying, I had this very clear image of like you sort of being present for the person's, healing narrative, as we like to call it, not shying away from the difficulties of it,
Mhm.
and then not necessarily getting drawn into it either,
Mhm.
but being able to have the maybe emotionality of it without you becoming one with it. Is that about right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's nuanced too. I mean, there's
Hmm.
so many variables and there's so many different levels too. And just reflecting back, like you said, sometimes too, it's not that I go into the emotions with them.
Right.
Sometimes I feel like maybe that's what they need in order
Hmm.
to express it out. I feel like, a lot of healing is just expression, like
Hmm.
whatever, it needs to come up to come out.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's that there's such an art to figuring out, the medicine has to go down.
Yes.
So, what, are you going to use a spoonful of sugar? Are you going to, do they need something sharp? Or are you at a level? I feel like much of my treatments lately, and this may change too, but
Mhm.
I feel like much of them is from a level that's not as engaged emotionally, that it's just I'm providing a mirror of what is for them,
Sure.
that's they can sense there's no judgment, even if it's a really normally a difficult truth. If they can feel that there's no right and wrong from the perspective
Yeah.
that I'm
Yes.
seeing,
Yep.
just just what is, and instead of right and wrong, the well-being that they might be missing out on
Yeah.
in with a different behavior or mindset or, pattern.
And so this is from the perspective of a like a medical practice, right? If we extrapolate one layer, I'm not going to say larger, but maybe a little bit more towards what people might experience. If we
Mhm.
move this towards the experience of like working with a plant medicine, right? And you have
Mhm.
some one or two people who are kind of in charge. They're sort of the practitioner. They are the practitioner in that case, and everybody who is there is sort of the patient. So now we go from
Mhm.
like a 1-to-1 ratio and we go to a larger group setting. The dynamics actually are still the same.
Mhm.
They're actually exactly the same. Um, but there is definitely like a level of navigation that is required when you're dealing with a group for sure.
Mhm.
And it does take a unique person to be able to have a genuine connection with people for the time that they're expressing, right? So,
Mhm.
and I'll say for me, and you're welcome to say for you, but like generally whenever we work with these with various plant medicines, it's done in a ceremonial space. It's either by yourself or in a ceremonial space. And usually there's, some people who are kind of like leading it, we could say, and then everybody's sort of on their own, journey independently, but together at the same time.
Mhm.
And there is such a power in doing healing as a community, doing healing as a group, because even if you have the most far out experience on whatever, you remember the other people around you who also had far out experiences. It adds to the, not to the drama, but to the, I guess, density or to the depth of the experience because they were going through their own thing around you. And it is really important to what you're saying to be non-judgmental about what people are going through and what it is that they are dealing with, whether it could be on both hands, because we hear all types of things being in a medicine space and being in a practice. People have very strong reactions to like what we would consider not a big deal, perhaps.
Mhm.
And then other people will have like really deep life experiences, and you're like, oh my God, I have lived an absolutely privileged life here. Jeez, like I have nothing to complain about. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And so, but you have to kind of thread that line. And I guess I wanted to like chop this up a little bit. Like, I feel like, and we don't have to do this too deeply, but like, I feel like there is such a grand divide, you know, right now in our culture,
Mhm.
and duality is the disease of the, not just the modern mind, but of the civilized mind, we'll call it, right?
Mhm.
That like we're always looking for the new divide. And I feel like this kind of mentality of being a non-judgmental listener is kind of like a healing salve for a multitude of people's divides, whether it be political, religious, whatever, environmental, whatever it is. Does that vibe in your?
I don't know. I think, absolutely, but at the same time, like you said, like you need a positive and negative
Mm,
for life to happen, you
yeah,
know. I
yeah,
remember one of my teachers would always say, Suffering means alive." And you can also go into it like the whole duality, non-duality. Is it just
yeah,
another polarity that you're making?
yeah, yeah.
And that the that's kind of the play of the Tao, is to manifest as these these polar opposites. And
Mm,
to borrow a line from Alan Watts, it's disharmony on one level is harmony on another level. And so like you need all these stresses to your body
mm,
in order for you to be healthy. And so we should see it as something to be overcome, to be overcame, and we
yeah,
should see it as an issue. And that ultimately brings life. But on another level, it's all one thing. But it's making me think of like I can talk at this level, but I'm thinking about Ram Dass once said, you have to focus the issue at the level that is required for it.
Yeah.
So like if you're at home and you have a roommate and they say it's your time to do the dishes, you can't say, well, we're all one. It's true,
Right.
but there's a confusion of levels. And so it becomes an art, and that's a really important the way I see Taoism is really understanding the levels, heaven and earth and
Right.
and man and everything in between.
And so then in terms of like how do you bring that into, you know, this kind of conversation about, holding space in a number of different environments? Like when you're talking with someone, like do you feel like you actively change hats? Like are you Dr. Rory when you're dealing with your patients and then, regular Rory when you're at home, versus, teacher when you're not? Or are you able, or how do you do it? I guess is my
Yeah,
question.
I think my focus is always trying to be as just allow and surrender to whatever the moment calls for. And so like bring myself to that moment and like I said, there's an art to the levels that you address and I feel like I do have different hats, but I have different hats for different patients according to what I feel like will benefit them
Right.
best. And it's not dishonest at all. It's like it's completely genuine. So it's all, there might be a lot of different dances that I do, but it's all in my own
Mm-hmm.
kind of style. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's to the beat of my own, you
Sure.
know, drum, my own
Sure.
heart. And so for one patient, I might joke a lot with them to try and get them to understand
Right.
something, or others I'll be, I don't like coming down hard on some, but some, need a little bit of like tough love. And so you have to give whatever that moment requires. And I feel like all of healing is really it is that force of whatever it is. It's this force of that field. And it's more clear in like in plant ceremonies, like how
Mm-hmm.
strong that field is, and then
Mm-hmm.
who's who even
Mm.
I'm looking at your blanket behind you and I'm just like
Yeah.
seeing a plant ceremony like an
Yeah.
ayahuasca going on.
Yeah.
And so it's like um I feel like everything is the will of the Tao, like I was saying, but someone needs to play the role. So it's
Sure.
about playing the role in different situations. There's
Yeah.
some line, I think it's in the Bhagavad Gita where he says, like, "Oh Arjuna, you have been as I have always been, and so now, since we're eternal, surrender to play this role that you could only play at this moment in time
Mm.
and space." Again, I'm paraphrasing
Sure.
poorly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah. And so I guess, I wanted to kind of like, maybe wrap this part of our conversation up with just like the medicine space, because let's be honest, like it is as popular now and only growing in popularity, the use of
yeah,
psychedelics for healing. And I don't think I mean, we have not hit peak popularity for
no,
psychedelics.
yeah,
I don't even think we're close.
I agree with you.
For us, this has been life for a long time,
Yeah,
but it has not hit fever pitch. Not even we're not. It's the bull run has not occurred yet. So
yeah, yeah,
and for our audience, in no way am I advocating pro or con. I just we give our experiences. I just wanted in part, and we will give some of our experiences here coming up shortly, but I wanted to just like highlight the importance of feeling this connection to go want to go work with it, but then understanding that that's part of it.
Mhm.
The other half is who it is that you're working with. And yes, ultimately you're working with whatever plant medicine you're working with for sure. But you're a human and there's another human there and probably other ones that are doing the administration and are taking care of you when you're in a vulnerable state. And so they call this, holding space for somebody or babysitting in a sense, depending on how you're doing it, or guiding or leading or whatever. And there is not a lot of public service announcements about this. Obviously, we know that like we should be cautious about who we go work with, whether it be massage therapist or the new restaurant downtown, right? That the reviews are good and they're not giving people food poisoning, make sure that all of this kind of stuff. The same goes in this space. Even more so, it's even more important to really have a deep level of discernment, I believe, and work with somebody who holds very good space. You know, we cannot really know about what people do in their own personal life. It's just not possible to like have a 10-year friendship with, shaman or whatever. But I feel like once you've decided that you want to do something, that doesn't mean that the first thing that you see now is exactly what's meant for you. You're like, oh, there it is. It's like because it's kind of in a lot of places, and we probably have people who know about it. But to really be discerning and who you work with and talk to them and see how it is that they interact with you and see if they're exhibiting some of the kind of qualities that Rory has mentioned here and that I have mentioned here so that you not only feel safe but you feel like you can relax, and that that they can take you through to the other side of the darkness, if you will, lead you through the valley of shadows, if you will. Do you have anything that you wanted to add with that? Just like I wanted to make sure that like I said, set the stage and then say the thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's so important. Just like any profession, there's good teachers, bad teachers, good cops, bad cops, yeah,
Yeah.
all that. And so it is incredibly important because you're diving so deep into the psyche and all
Yes.
that becomes you're in a field.
Yeah.
And it's not just the individual and so yeah, I'd completely agree with you. And there's something about can they take you through, the valley of death, like you're saying that, like, I really feel like I guess you would call it like your sanjiao, like your nerve, like how your spiritual muscle, like, can you, is this person gonna really like go through hell with you if they have to?
Yes. Yes.
Like, can you
Yes.
trust them to get you through to the other side?
Yes.
Or are they gonna buckle? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Will you be abandoned?
Yeah. And those are like the most important, the toughest trips are like the greatest ones on the other side too.
They are full of awe, but they are not awesome.
No. And again, it's surrender. It's
Yeah.
really
Well, we're going to give some of our little tales here next time on the next episode. So make sure to tune in for that. Rory, thanks for coming on today. I'm glad you're part of the show here. And as always, audience, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Hit us up on the Instagram, Gin and Tantra Podcast, or hit us up on the email. The what is it? Gin and Tantra at gmail.com. For Rory, this is Daniel. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.